Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast, and others of you are joining us on our digital platforms. I'm Rahsaan Hall, President and CEO of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, and your host this evening. Tonight, the state of black men and boys, a conversation about inspiring and uplifting black boys and men in our communities. Our discussion will touch on a range of subjects, from mental health, employment, to the importance of role models and mentors. We've got a lot to get to, so let's get started. Joining us tonight, Dr. Kevin Simon is a pediatric psychiatrist at Boston's Children's Hospital and Chief Behavioral Health Officer at the Boston Public Health Commission for the City of Boston. Jonathan Allen is the co-founder and Director of Development at Leadership Brainery, an organization that creates equitable access to master's and doctoral degrees and workforce leadership opportunities for young leaders from underrepresented backgrounds. Adrian Major is the founder of Dreamcatcher Initiative, an organization that creates pathways and programs to empower youth and that will help them achieve their dreams and realize their potential. And James Mackey, Vice Chair of the Black Men and Boys Commission for the City of Boston. He is also a community advocate, a Black male health and wellness group facilitator, and the founder of Brothers Building, as well as the founder of Different, a clothing brand focused on social and emotional wellness. And Gabriel Petit. He is a Dreamcatcher Initiative mentee and participant. Welcome to you all.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here this evening to talk about this conversation that's very important in our community. There are a lot of narratives that exist about the challenges that we as black men face, but I'd like to shift that conversation a bit and start off with joy. So, Jonathan, what is so joyful about being a black man?
Oh my goodness. I think about all of the creativity that's bottled up inside of me, and I can speak from living my life, right? I can't speak for what it means or how it feels for any of these other brothers to embody joy in their own lives. But for me as a black gay man, that joy of believing and loving myself despite if anybody else does, is a joy that I've learned to embody, not one that I would say that I was necessarily always carrying. I've had to cultivate it through a myriad of circumstances and experiences, and I'm glad that I got it. And this joy that I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away.
All right, I hear you, preacher. Adrian, some of the work that you do with the Dreamcatcher Initiative brings you in touch with a lot of folks who might not be in joyful situations, but how do you carry that message of joy to the people that you're working with? What are the values and the things that you lift up?
One is being genuine to yourself. We always think about being happy as like an external smile. We got to have internal smiles too. Right. Being part of the greatest hue is one of the greatest things ever. And understanding that culturally, you got to go internal and figure out your historical values and make those things external values too. And teaching the young men and young ladies that, keep hope alive, which is an acronym for us. It stands for helping other people elevate. So we got to help other people elevate.
That's fantastic. James, you have been involved in advocacy and activism on a whole host of issues, and I know that can be, because we've done some of that work together, it can be very demanding and draining. What is it about your black manhood that brings you joy in the midst of those experiences?
Yeah, I appreciate your question. For me, being a husband to my beautiful wife, being a dad to being a father to my beautiful children, and just seeing them, watching them enjoy life, go through the ups and downs of how to navigate this society that we live in, but still being present in moments where there's a lot of adversity, but knowing that I'm good, knowing that my family's good, knowing that my people is good, and knowing that I'm authentically me is key. And so being different, not compromising my integrity, all of those things bring me joy.
That's fantastic. Gabriel, you have the privilege and status of being the youngest person here in this conversation, and there's been a lot of critique about the younger generation and how mental health and emotional instability makes it seem that so many of you all, people in your age group, do not have joy, that you're not happy, that you're dealing with depression. And to the extent that those things are true, what is it that you see that brings you joy, or that you see as joyful in you and your friends in your age group?
Well, thank you for the question also. I think something that brings me joy as being a black man is being a protector naturally, being somebody who people look at as a safe zone. People look at this dark and this dominant skin, they look at it like, well, just being in my skin, being a black man in my skin, I feel like people are safe around me. People feel safe around me because of how I act and where I grow up and what I come from. I'm not easy. I'm definitely tough. And when I get into situations, I try to dominate it. Mm-hmm. I try to take it over as a black man. So I believe that's something great that I have as a quality.
That's good. So, Dr. Simone, I touched on it a little bit with my question to Gabriel, but the prevalence of mental health concerns and pushing back against this narrative around the struggles that black men have, why is it important for us to find joy, to create narratives about the things that we're actually doing? I remember not too long ago that there was this Instagram trend where black men were out videoing themselves frolicking, right? Just having fun, like, oh, we frolicking right now? Why is that so important?
Yeah, so as the gentleman acknowledged, the different representations of joy. Joy is important. You feel free. Mm-hmm. You can feel flow. You can feel powerful. You feel as though you can be anything that you want to be, think about anything that you want to be. And in our particular society, oftentimes we're not told that we can be what we want to be. We can go where we want to go. We can drive down the road that we have to drive down. There's a lot of instances where the rules of society seem as though they're against the black male. And so if you can find joy, right, and live your truth, that is very powerful, and it's needed because, again, the external pressures of society consistently demonstrate maybe they don't want necessarily black men to feel the joys that these brothers just talked about.
Mm-hmm. So, James, Dr. Simo talked about some of the restrictions that society has placed on us as black men, and you have been one who has consistently pushed back against some of those. But what are the array of issues? Because for as much as it's important for us to have joy and redefine what the experience of black men is, there are very practical realities that we face day to day. What are the things that you see as some of the most pressing issues that black men are facing that has led to some of your advocacy?
Due to the systematic racism that has been plagued on black men since our existence in this country, every day I look in a brother's face and I can see so many compounding issues that they are dealing with, whether it be from food security, whether it be from they can't find meaningful employment to take care of their family, whether it be from they're walking down the street and someone crosses the street because they feel uncomfortable and think that something's going to happen to them, or just being with your wife at a hospital visit with your children and they speak only to your wife and not you, not being acknowledged, not being seen, feel like you're not being heard, or even in public spaces and places where everyone else has the opportunities to feel free, but you feel excluded because any and everything you're doing, cameras are on you, people are watching. One wrong mistake can cost you, and that compounding trauma impacts our health. And so the social determinants of inequities that we face are killing us faster than any race and any gender across this country. And that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And I think the way that it shows up sometimes can be negative. And so, Adrian, the work that you do with Dream Catchers, can you say a little bit about that and why it's so important, especially given how some of these restrictions and the oppression that we face manifests itself in negative ways in our communities?
Thanks for the question. With us, is the biggest thing is like putting your dreams as a possibility. We always say the word dream, but what does it mean to make it possible, tangible, that I can do something, I can accomplish something? We can look at all of the angst and all of these things that go around in the community, but at a certain point, we're going to have to stand up and say, hey, we got to uprise against them. We can identify them, but they shouldn't stifle us from our greatness.
That's right.
It's greatness in all of us, and let's get to it. And a lot of that is sometimes you don't have a quarterback, sometimes you don't have a blocker. But I'm going to be that, and I'm going to advocate for things that you guys deserve. Young men and women, you deserve it. And what better than to say, I want to do this, let's make it happen. Regardless of what regime, what institution, sometimes it's just a voice. A voice of reason, a voice that'll challenge the regime, the voice that helps you elevate. And we're here together. We can struggle together, we can celebrate together, and we can grow together.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect, especially, again, we're trying to push back against some of the narratives that exist about black men. Gabriel, my understanding is that you've had some challenges along the way, but you've been able to catch some of your dreams. Can you say a little bit about, what some of your experience has been and where you are now and what you're doing? To Adrian's point, right? We can push back against the things that are oppressing us and go after the things that we want to see.
Some of the things that I've accomplished, like I went to college but first I want to say, I had a rough upbringing as a youth. I was incarcerated. I had big cases, big charges, firearms and drugs, a lot of them, and I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, in my life. It was all my fault, but in my life I wasn't in the right place. I came on to do my time, and I did everything I had to do. I came home and I changed my life with E-Dreamers. I started a business called Lotus Brings. LLC is based off a lotus flower and the concept of a lotus flower, how it grows from the mud and it grows to be beautiful. That's all I really knew about a business, about what I wanted my business to be about. So it was definitely like something to grow off of. I haven't grown off of it like too much, but I definitely established my business and made money off my business and participated in pop-up shops and made my business work for me. That's something I'm very proud of. After that, I went to college at Benjamin Franklin Institute. I got my HVAC apprentice license. I got an EPA and I'm OSHA 30 certified through ROCA, through E-Dreamers, through ROCA.
Right.
I've been achieving ever since. Ever since I was released and I seen that my freedom was taken away from me, I came home and I was just on that time and I just needed to achieve.
That's so fantastic. So congratulations. Shout out to this brother for doing positive things and turning it around, even in the face of some major barriers. Keeping with this theme of creating our own destiny and our own future despite what's out there, Jonathan, Leadership Brainery is doing some really engaging and impressive work to create more pathways for people to have higher earning potential, to be in positions that make more money, but also have more influence and impact on the society that we live in. Could you say a little bit about Leadership Brainery and why it's important for you as a black man to have an organization like that and the impact that that organization has?
Oh my God, it's so loaded and so important. And Leadership Brainery was founded by myself and my partner Derek, who is also our full-time executive director, out of our own lived experience being underrepresented in graduate school, going to law school, right up the street, walking in first day. I was one out of 4 black men out of 250 students that entered into my law school class. Derek went to a med school in the city for his master's of public health and was the only black man in his cohort. And came over to that same law school that I was at, and that year the numbers went down, and he was the only black man in the cohort. And so this issue is pervasive across so many of our competitive graduate schools. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has reported that the fastest fastest growing segment of the workforce are jobs that are requiring master's and doctoral degrees at entry level. But yet we remain grossly underrepresented in graduate school. In the 1960s and 70s and 80s, there were more black men in med school then than there are today.
Wow.
And so we're seeing how this underrepresentation is also one of the chronic issues in social determinants of health that is perpetuating many of the equities and challenges that we're experiencing in our communities. And it's also about representation, right? Because the more we see what we can be, the more our imaginations expand around what's possible for ourselves. But yet in our communities, we are not at the same velocity and rate telling our young people that they can be astronauts and doctors and lawyers and CEOs and mental health therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists, and that they can ascend to these levels of influence. When we think about management and senior leadership roles in the workforce, they are the decision makers on how resources are being allocated, opportunities are being given, and we're not represented at the scale and rate that we need to. And graduate school is the accelerated pathway there. It is not the only pathway, and sure, there are many people who've been able to do phenomenal things with their lives without attaining a master's or doctoral degree, and there's some formula and some strategy that you need to wrap into deciding if graduate school is right for you. But there are certain occupations where you cannot enter into that field without it. To be a Rahsaan Hall, to be doctor here, right? You can't do it because you need it. And we know that our communities are in mental health crisis. Right? But we need to be preaching to our young people that we need them in these fields where a bit more education is going to be required. Yeah, student loan debt is a big challenge for that, which is also why we need to be thinking strategically about how we recalibrate our philanthropic interests and focus to also say to our young people, we won't let debt be a barrier from you going to master's and doctoral degrees. So as we think about scholarship aid, we know that graduate school scholarship aid is pennies compared to what you see in undergrad. So we need to be a bit more strategic and mobilized around this.
So I want to go back to something that you talked about, particularly around mental health and issues around social determinants of health. There's a clip that we want to play that is from a roundtable that was held by, I believe, the U.S. Attorney Surgeon General, that's talking about the need for black men in particular to get help with mental health. You're talking about these student loans. If something's going to depress you, that's going to be it. But separate and apart from that, the reality of the traumas that we're facing, the conditions that we're living in our community, the experiences that we've been exposed to, and the reluctance on the part of many to get help. So let's roll this clip and we'll get some feedback from you all after.
So for me, it was actually really hard to actually admit that I needed help. I could feel, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when I actually started to, reach out to others for help, I just felt just an enormous stress over me. I felt that I was depressed. I wasn't being the same around my family. I wasn't playing video games with my brother like I normally do. I wasn't, gossiping with my twin sister like I normally do. I was getting out of my character. And that's when I realized that, there's not anything wrong with me, but I do need someone that's going to help me navigate the challenges that may come up in my life. So, starting therapy, and it was important for me to have someone that was going to show me new life skills, show me how to approach different problems, show me how to approach different relationships. And that's what made me get back to the person that I was.
So, Dr. Simone, say a little bit about why there may be resistance, particularly with black men, to seek mental health services, whether it's counseling, therapy, or other supports, and what the benefits are in light of what some of the brothers have shared about their own experiences and what's needed in our community.
Right. So, as this was referenced, the notion of underrepresentation in mental and behavioral health fields, and then the historical systemic racism that existed in this country, it's not surprising that African American people, but particularly males, are reticent to engage with healthcare system just broadly. To his point, back in 1968, there were more African American men in medical school who could become psychiatrists. And so if I'm a black male that's in, Dorchester, Hyde Park somewhere, and I'm thinking I want to engage with therapy, well, who is it that comes to your mind as a therapist? Is it a black male? Is it even a person of color? Because in part, you want to have some cultural or racial concordance at times with your provider. And if I presume that my provider is not going to understand me, how am I then going to get comfortable with that person to actually share some of the potential traumas that have happened to me? And so I think that's some of the barrier and the stigma related to mental health. And truthfully, given the stark disparity between people who pursue behavioral health careers, get into graduate school, at the rate we're going, there'll never be really one-to-one racial concordance. And so it's important for our allies who don't have the same hue as us to be comfortable asking questions and empathizing with our experiences. And so I tell people all the time, I myself, yes, I'm a psychiatrist, but I also go to therapy, and I don't just go to therapy when I'm in a crisis, which is oftentimes when people start to think about, oh, let me now engage. And the reality is you want to start going when you're not in crisis, hopefully to prevent the crisis from happening. And then two, there's a whole host of things, just being a human being, but particularly being a black male, that is burdensome. And so that in and of itself is reason enough to talk to somebody who could help you unpack things from your past that you don't even know you're carrying with your past. I'll give you an example. I always highlight my wife when we were dating. She'd make me food. I'd ask her, hey, do you have any Sweet Baby Ray's? She's like, you didn't even taste it. I'm like, I'm going to eat it. Come to find out there's a little tension happening. When we went home for a holiday, my mom, she put down the plate and Sweet Baby Ray. And then Britt's like, is that why? I'm like, oh, you know what? It probably is. So here's this thing that I've been doing from my childhood, but now impacting me in my 20s at the time. And I wasn't really cognizant of it, right? There are so many things that we're carrying with us from our childhood, from our upbringing, that we may not realize it's actually impacting how I respond when somebody questions me. Or why is it that I feel tense in certain situations? And therapy can be a very good outlet, among other things, to help people navigate that.
So I want to build on that, and as we wind this down, to just, if you could say something briefly about the importance of mentorship or role models, especially as it relates to seeking help. I know, we can talk about how mentors and role models can get you to consider career pathways or to get you out of trouble. But what about the role of mentors and role models in getting you to seek help? So we're winding down. So if you could just, everyone briefly.
Yeah, I give the example all the time that, Michael Jordan had a coach, LeBron has a coach, Tom Brady had a coach. A mentor can be at times like a coach, someone to help you get you to where you want to go, yet you don't exactly know how to get there. And it sounds like, in terms of dream catchers, that's some of the elements that they're doing. And so that's critical that you have somebody that you can trust to talk to, share a little bit, and then maybe that person can help you navigate towards seeking care.
Okay. How does a mentor get you where you need to be?
I think it's important that we talk about integral mentors and make sure that they walk what they talk. Is critical. But I think if you was to change it from mentor to navigator, a navigator is needed. And it's even the direction of how language is. So you look at mental health has a stigma to it. So you think about it. I think about it just talking. Do you want to talk to somebody? So I think it's language, and it's also making sure they walk the talk.
All right. Gabriel, briefly, why is it important to have mentors to help with mental health?
I believe it's important to have mentors to help with mental health because if you're young, most likely you're misunderstood. That's a very common word to describe young people. So we always gonna need somebody to talk to and share everything that's, that could be understood by some people. It's misunderstood by the people around you.
All right. James.
Listen, I'm not perfect. I'm just different, and I need support, guidance, and not only do I get that from a mentor, I get it from my wife. I get it from me just seeing my kids and me humbling myself at times when I need it. And we need spaces where black men can be their authentic self and can express and be vulnerable to talk about the things that we're dealing with mentally or things that we've dealt with in the past to cope with, overcome, and heal.
All right, Jonathan?
Yeah, and I think community and consensus is also really important. I think so many people need to know that they're not the only ones dealing with these issues and circumstances. And I think for so many people, they often think they're the only one in the boat. And to have mentors or navigators to say, I've been there. I've experienced that. You're not alone. You're not experiencing a unique situation. No matter how different or unique it might be, there are some connections that might make one feel seen, heard, and affirmed, and knowing that if I got through it, you can get through it. If we overcame it, you can overcome it. And so that's really important, that track record of overcoming and having mentors and navigators to really reflect that.
Wonderful. Well, that is the end of our discussion. We'll have more of our conversation on the state of black boys and men in an upcoming episode. So thank you to all of our guests, and thank you for watching. Have a good night.